Well guys, here you go. It took me 4 months total to watch, rank, and write about all 23 Ghibli films, and I've gotta say, Studio Ghibli has some really bad movies. But that said, they also have some mind-blowing masterpieces, so stick around to see what those are, and let's get into the ranking. With most of the films at the bottom of the list, I can understand if someone really liked it, it's just that I didn't. With this movie, I don't care who you are, if you like this movie, you should not be able to vote. Most obviously, the animation is horrendous, with awful character animation. It looks new, just not good. The characters themselves are also awful. Earwig is evil and annoying to everyone in the film, and by the end she learns absolutely nothing and goes through no character development. Goro Miyazaki has never made a good movie in his life. Just get that guy out of here. The ending magically resolves itself for no real reason, and the witch just goes from being a bossy, obnoxious jerk to being happy and somewhat nice at the end. Why? I guess we'll never know because the movie never explains it. I guess the voice acting could have been worse. I thought the Mandrake had a few silly moments that were okay. Why am I trying to find pros in a movie that quite literally is one big con? I didn't think it was possible to make an animated film worse than The Nut Job 2, but somehow Studio Ghibli of all animation studios proved me wrong. 2 out of 10. Unlike Earwig and the Witch, where I actually despise it and therefore have something to say about it, this one is just really lame. It is a love story made with no love. The dialogue is simply not how teenagers talk, and the characters have no personality. They are either nice or mean, and nothing else. The main romance is terrible, and let me explain why. There is a girl. She is super obnoxious and aggravating to everyone and complains about the most random and stupid things like her fucking wallpaper. No, not joking. There is also a guy. He has a kind, helpful, and interesting friend that supports him through everything, and instead of focusing on that, we should focus on how the guy falls for the girl. Why? Because he has a flashback to all those times they spent together, like when she screamed at him because she doesn't know how to take out her anger, or that time when she slapped him because he told her what a terrible person she is, because she is a terrible person. What great memories those are. But who knows? This movie to me now is obnoxious and aggravating, but maybe one day I'll fall in love with it after I remember all those great times I had watching this mind-bogglingly meaningless garbage. 3 out of 10. Okay, this one isn't that bad. This is most people's bottom spot for a Ghibli ranking, but there were some things I liked. Sure, it had almost no whimsical elements for me to grab onto like most Ghibli films, but it was kinda interesting for the most part, I guess. It's basically just a nothing movie. Not offensive per se, but the voice acting is mediocre, the shots are stale, and the plot is cookie cutter to be nice. I always look to Ghibli for something whimsical and fun, and I am sad to report this is not quite what I wanted, even for something that was so desperately trying to be another Ghibli classic. 4 out of 10. This might be the roughest take all video, but since YouTube has hidden the dislike button, I can say whatever I want. I do not care how much nostalgia you have for this movie. It is bad. Yeah, I said it. Fuck this movie. The main characters are one-dimensional and so annoying. The way they talk to each other sounds like aliens pretending to be humans, and the voice acting is despicable. And yes, I am talking about the US dub. There is almost no story in the movie, and that's fine. Some of my favorite movies of all time have little to no plot. You don't need a plot if you can just create a mood or feeling. But wait, there is no mood or feeling being created because it has to be dumbed down for the 3-year-olds who love this movie. Many people say that they love how it represents the wild imagination you have as a kid, but the imagination is so boring and surface level in this movie. Rewatching this was actually a chore, and I thought I liked this movie. There is so much they could have done, but everything in this movie is so surface level and unbelievably boring. 4 out of 10. Okay, so this is another really hot take, but Howl's Moving Castle is not a good movie in my opinion. Let me explain. It starts off as a fun and whimsical experience that introduces you to our main characters and eventually the castle, but not too far in, this movie completely falls apart plot-wise. The characters are interesting, but also unpredictable in a way that they could do anything and you would not care because you don't understand their characters. Howl goes from being calm, kind, and stoic to angry, loud, and vitriolic because his hair changes colors. The war is never explained and ends up just stopping because the queen or whatever calls it off for no reason. I'm sure there is something I'm missing here, but this movie just doesn't add up to anything. What wasted potential indeed. 4 out of 10. The annoying thing about ranking Studio Ghibli is that most of the bottom spots aren't even hateable, they're just bland and boring, which is quite the case with Up on Poppy Hill. It's just a lame, unpassionate slog fest. The visuals are so dark that you sometimes start to fall asleep, and all the characters don't feel like real people. Wow, Goro Miyazaki, this just proves that just because your family is in the business doesn't mean you should be too. The entire movie is stale and boring. It follows the traditional story beats of a romance, and there is nothing new being tackled in this film. Don't watch it. It's a nothing film. 5 out of 10. Huh. Well, this is not boring, I'll tell you that much. What a weird premise. Humanoid transforming raccoons with clothes need to save the environment with their giant inflatable ball sacks. What? But for such an outlandish premise, it fails to bring anything too ambitious to the table. It sticks to the usual Ghibli tropes, and the plot is honestly pretty uninteresting. I enjoyed the old school animation style, but other than that, this movie was nothing too special. The characters were very unoriginal and not entertaining, and the dialogue was shockingly unnatural. 5 out of 10. The cat returns. Why? Not to shade Whisper of the Heart, but basing an entire movie around a faraway side character of another film that wasn't even that popular is just a wild idea. This really just did not need to be made. That said, I really like the character design and the fun pace of the film. The animation is admittedly some of my least favorite out of the Ghibli catalog, but it's still at the very least watchable, unlike something like Earwig and the Witch. But yeah, this movie is just okay. Unnecessary? For sure. Enjoyable? I'd say so. 5 out of 10. My Neighbors the Yamadas. This is the best art house Ghibli film in my opinion. It's small and sweet, but also very beautiful. It's based on a popular manga about the lives of the Yamadas, told in vignettes. I will say that this film is just not for me. It's a comedy, and most of the humor is humor I can't relate to because it's too culturally specific. I respect it, but personally, it's just not my thing. It always felt like more of a side movie for Ghibli because of how little it was doing and how unpopular it is, but I'm glad to see that some people like it a lot. I just can't like it that much. 6 out of 10. This movie is really nice. It tells the story of greed, love, and art. The animation is beautiful and feels like it was ripped straight out of a manga. Kayuga's relationship with her mother and father is realistic, and the whole plot of the film is so encapsulating. Although it is a bit highbrow, and honestly a little boring for me, it is still very impressive and objectively great. I just think there are more interesting films to me on this list. Once again, this is a case of the visuals not being able to save an otherwise okay movie by Ghibli standards. 7 out of 10. Man, I really wanted to love this movie, but I just kinda liked it. It had so much unnecessary self-importance for me to get around. I do like the incorporation of flashbacks into the narrative, and I also really enjoy how the film is grounded in reality, but every now and then you get a scene with some magical elements, like a character floating midair. The end credit sequence is great, and the sunsets in this movie are a thing of beauty. I really did love some things about this movie, but overall it was a bit convoluted and bland. I know this is some people's favorite Ghibli movie, but I don't know. It just wasn't my thing. 7 out of 10. Wow, this movie is so derivative. If you asked a Ghibli fan to make an average Ghibli film, taking all of the good aspects from other movies, this would be it. It's good, I enjoyed it. The animation is sleek but faithful to the older types of animation for Ghibli, the main character is fun and likable, and the magical aspects are all there, but this felt just a bit uninspired. There was no new ground being covered here. Also, the villain was hella mid and unnecessary and boring. But yeah, overall it was enjoyable, but nothing special. 7 out of 10. The Wind Rises is a very well-made movie that I just didn't really connect with that much. Unlike the last film on this list, I can see that there was a bunch of ambition and inspiration within it. I just don't care about airplanes. And this entire movie is about a guy whose main thing is liking airplanes. So, yeah, I couldn't really connect with him for some reason. It's good. It had a really good pace and flow that a lot of good biographical films seem to have, and the main character is charming and made me more interested in airplanes. I just don't think there was enough going on to keep me invested my whole way through. I respect the vision, but it was just extremely not my thing. Wonder how many times I've said that in this video. 7 out of 10. When Marnie Was There is a beautiful film. It was so draining because of its runtime, but also because of how sad it was. The animation is beautiful, and the ocean is so amazingly animated in this movie. I love it when Ghibli films are focused on two characters connecting with each other, and that is exactly what this movie is. So much, in fact, that this movie was literal queer bait. The movie is very patient, but remains to be entertaining because of how real the characters are. The visuals are amazing with the traditional style of Ghibli animation, but a new glossy feel to it all because of how it's aged. The film isn't super whimsical like all the others, and instead is more realistic and down to earth, but in this case, I think that was a good idea. 7 out of 10. Porco Rosso is just cool. Whether it's the awesome pirate fights or the crazy plane action scenes, this movie kicks ass. Porco Rosso is an interesting and layered character. The love story in this movie isn't rushed at all, and works as a side plot. The main plot is just so much fun. The score is whimsical, and it is a great Ghibli movie. It just isn't perfect because the technical aspects could be better. Aside from plot and characters, this is a pretty average Ghibli film, but it's still a very entertaining watch. Just for the visuals and incredible world building and landscapes, I would say this is a must-watch for any Ghibli fan, or just fan of animation in general. 8 out of 10. This is where we get to the really good stuff. This is a great film. The visuals are top 3 for Ghibli, and the landscaping is astounding. The plot is interesting and pretty different for Ghibli. The characters are lovable and layered, and this is actually the first Ghibli production film ever. This is quite literally the Toy Story of Ghibli films, a classic with very few flaws, but just missing a bit of that bold punch that makes these films special and sets them apart from one another. However, it's still really good, and I'd suggest you'd give it a watch. It's the first time so far on this list I feel like Ghibli successfully made a fun, fast-paced, interesting, and visually transcendent adventure, which is usually what I want from not only Studio Ghibli, but the legend himself, Hayao Miyazaki. 8 out of 10. Yeah, you guys probably thought this was going to be higher, and I'm sorry. This is an incredibly depressing movie, and that is why people love it so much. It is a very graphic, sad, and realistic depiction of war, but instead of focusing on the troops, it focuses on the citizens, specifically these two kids. It focuses on their struggle to find food, shelter, and also shows the imagination and unfortunate delusion of children in the war. The film is still baked into my head, but I don't think I love it. There are some memorable scenes and images, but overall there really isn't a cohesive story, and the film kind of peters out. It did not make me cry, although it did make me very sad right from the opening scene. Overall, this film is really well made, but being depressing isn't enough to be a 10 out of 10. So this one is an 8. If you are in the mood to watch the exact opposite of Grave of the Fireflies, watch this. It is a small-scale, imaginative, and entertaining coming-of-age movie. Some people think this is the best Ghibli film, and that is factually false. I'm sorry, but it's true. This movie has some cute dialogue, a beautiful artistic scene, and some interesting characters, but it really isn't that deep. This movie talks about the struggle of feeling important and creating something original and worthwhile, which is already weird given these are children and they are already worried about making sure their lives leave an impact, but the message of this film is also very surface level. It tells you to stick with your gut and about how young people make sense of the world, but it didn't stick out too much to me. Also, the movie ends so abruptly, and you are almost confused when the credits roll, but maybe I'm missing something here. Overall, it's a really good movie, just something that did not and will not stick with me or make a large impact. 8 out of 10. Kiki's Delivery Service is an incredibly cute movie, but instead of something like Totoro, the main characters do not cause ear bleeding. The movie has a very sweet and calm pace with endearing characters and so many memorable moments. I don't find any of the characters annoying because of how surprisingly fleshed out they are. The film does what Totoro was trying to do, and creates a mood and feeling. The film really doesn't have any stakes until the end, which does feel a little forced, but that is one of my only complaints with this movie. There's plenty of funny slapstick and strange dialogue that makes the movie so charming and rewatchable. Even from the first minutes of the film, you can tell how great it's going to be, just with its fast-paced and encouraging and sweet characters. Kiki's delivery service, all in all, isn't quite the best Ghibli movie, but it is close. The stakes are low, but the heart is there. 9 out of 10. Ponyo is a very popular Ghibli film, but I still feel like it gets slept on. Most people seem to think it is just okay or pretty good but overhyped. I completely disagree, however, because I love this movie. The main character is one of the most endearing and expressive Ghibli protagonists ever, due to fantastic voice acting from Frankie Jonas, who apparently is the fourth Jonas brother, along with more expressive acting from Liam Neeson and Matt Damon. The ocean in this film is so deeply explored, and is made fascinating from great world building. The setup in this film is extremely entertaining and memorable, and the rest of the film is almost on that level. I really do love this movie for its wild imagination, charming dialogue and characters, and fantastic voice acting. 9 out of 10. Princess Mononoke, one of the classic Hayao Miyazaki epics. Where to start? I love the quick explanation of the setting of the film in the beginning, so everything can flow so smoothly in the second and third act. I love how the breakneck pacing of the action is just as entertaining as the concise character dialogue and exploration of the film. I love how the film not once loses steam, and is constantly moving from place to place at a comfortable speed. I really do love almost everything about this film. I went into this movie knowing that the fight scenes were going to look amazing, but good lord, it's even better than I expected. The animals in the film look realistic and don't seem robotic, which seems to be the problem with many animals in animated films, and the action itself is swift, but precisely used and not overbearing. The fact that this feels like Infinity War and Endgame, and yet is shorter than both of those films, is phenomenal. The plot, characters, and setting is so dense that you'd think they would have to rush through most of it in movie length, but every element is set up in a gradual and consistent way. The animation is also so beautiful. The lighting in this film is awe-inspiring with sweet glimmers and shine that enthrall you further into the world, and the mass and scale of the setting is executed so well in this animation that you really feel like you are in the world with the characters. The film captures and inspires the imagination with a storyline that feels like it could go on forever. The score and sound of the world further pushes you into the journey the characters face in the film with some of the most beautiful compositions for a score I've heard in a long time. The movie may not be the most personal or revisitable film you could want, but it is damn near the perfect Ghibli experience. 9 out of 10. Spirited Away is probably the most iconic and highly rated Ghibli film of all time. And yeah, it's pretty clear why. The world building in this movie is insane. There are so many wacky and entertaining characters and scenes that it feels like they are their own universe, but they always progress the movie in a unique way. The attention to detail in the world throughout the film is excellent. This is a film that always benefits from repeat viewings because of how much there is going on in the world, and how much is being conveyed to us in a very subtle way. The soothing piano score adds to the wonder of the setting, which is great to see. The creatures are all incredibly unique and magnificent every time they appear on screen. The adventure feel to the film is perfectly executed, with the hero's journey being used in a very modern and complex way. All the twists and turns feel like they play the perfect part in the movie, and it all leads to a satisfying and compelling ending. The movie is phenomenal, and is for sure one of the best of all time for how imaginative the ideas are, and how shockingly perfect they are executed. 10 out of 10. But there is still one more movie we haven't talked about, and that is Castle in the Sky is one of my personal favorite movies ever made. The world building and mechanics of the world are deeply beautiful, with some of the most memorable scenes out of any film ever. The first act is so quick and charming, with great introduction to everyone who will be important in the story. The animation is fantastic. The way it flows, the way it's animated, and in certain scenes even goes beyond the decade. This helps a lot to bring out life to such a fantastical story, both in tone and scope. that also feels in line with the main themes that are always present in Miyazaki's stories, about how we are mistreating nature and our land, and how all of these things are damaging not only Earth, but people and us as a society. I love how charming all the characters and clues are to the castle in the sky, and how satisfying the payoff is. The robot and the transportation design is fantastic, as is most of the design, to be honest. I love how many characters are given a lot of depth. The action scenes are well directed and thrilling, and the music is the best. I really love the occasional synth pop groove that gets thrown in, spicing up the film. What I found lacking in Howl's Moving Castle, this film delivered in spades. Characters that you were immediately invested in, with Sheeta and Pazu, and the focus never shifts away from them. The second characters enrich and enhance the narrative rather than overwhelm it. The themes are not heavy-handed, and the plot only increases the stakes and pays them off as it travels along the journey. The animation has beautiful hand-drawn qualities to it that make one gasp at certain moments, blending the aesthetic with a bunch of memorable action set pieces. The score here from Joe Hashai, I am probably not pronouncing that correctly, is probably my favorite from any Miyazaki film. The third act of this movie simply can't be touched. The animation goes from being wondrous and immaculate to transcendently beautiful. I really cannot describe in words how beautiful the castle itself is. The point is, give this movie a watch ASAP. 10 out of 10. And that is my Studio Ghibli ranking. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, because this took a long time. And yeah, see you in the next one.